The air shimmered with a tension that even the wind dared not disturb, an almost tangible pulse of power radiating across Metropolis. Somewhere above the skyline, a lone figure descended through the clouds, his aura burning like a miniature sun. Citizens scattered, their cries swallowed by the oppressive hum of energy that made the hairs on their necks stand rigid. Superman, already scanning the horizon, felt a prickle of unfamiliar dread. He had faced threats before, world-ending, universe-shattering, but this was something new. Something alien, yet terrifyingly alive, with raw, unrestrained force. The Saiyan Prince, hair like molten bronze, eyes alight with battle lust, landed with the kind of impact that cracked concrete and rattled glass. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the impossible to happen. If you're ready to witness a clash that could shake every reality from the skies of Metropolis to the outer edges of the DC cosmos, hit that like button, share this with every fan of Dragon Ball and DC alike, and subscribe for a journey into a battle no one could have predicted. The city was alive, though unaware of the storm about to descend upon it. Metropolis gleamed beneath a sun that glinted off glass towers, its usual rhythm of traffic, chatter, and distant sirens offering a false sense of calm. Birds wheeled in, the sky, their cries punctuating the morning haze. While deep within the heart of the city, Superman hovered above the tallest spire, eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. He had sensed a shift, a tremor in the currents of the world, subtle yet undeniable. Something had arrived, something not of this planet. Then the sky cracked. A streak of bronze light tore through the atmosphere, cutting across clouds as though they were nothing more than silk veils. Pedestrians froze mid-step, mouths hanging open, eyes reflecting streaks of fiery energy that made no sound yet hummed. With the resonance of power, windows rattled, car alarms screamed, and at the center of it all, descending like a falling star with precision and purpose, came a figure no one could mistake for human. His hair burned like molten metal, sharp eyes locked forward with unyielding determination. His armor, gleaming and scarred, bore the insignia of a warrior civilization no one here had ever known. Yet the aura he exuded demanded recognition. Authority, strength, and absolute dominance. Superman's heart, so often steady in the face of calamity, skipped a beat. He had faced alien invaders, rogue gods, and ancient horrors, but this presence was different. It carried no diplomacy, no prelude, no warning beyond the violent entry itself. Even standing miles above the city, the pressure radiating off the newcomer made the air taste metallic, thick with potential destruction. And then, without ceremony, the Saiyan Prince landed. The impact was seismic. Concrete buckled, streetlights bent, and a tremor rolled through the sidewalks. Dust rose like smoke from a freshly fallen volcano, curling around the figure who remained poised, eyes scanning with lethal precision. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Citizens gawked from broken windows and alleys, unsure if they were witnessing salvation or annihilation. The prince's gaze finally lifted to meet the solitary figure in the sky, the man who had become the symbol of hope, the protector of this city. Superman felt a ripple of unease. This was no ordinary challenger. He had fought Martians, gods of chaos, and the detritus of alien civilizations. But the raw, concentrated intensity emanating from this Saiyan was unlike anything catalogued in Kryptonian records. It was arrogant, and yet it was disciplined. lethal, yet precise. "Who are you?" Superman called, his voice carrying through the city's streets as much as it carried in the vibrations of the air. His tone was steady, but beneath it lay a trace of caution, of curiosity, of that subtle recognition that some threats could not be reasoned with. The figure straightened, dust falling from his shoulders as though shaken from the universe itself. He spoke, but not as a guest of this world might. His words were clipped, sharp, a declaration rather than a greeting. "I am Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans. I have come to test the strongest warrior of this planet. Prepare yourself." The statement landed heavier than any weapon. Superman's eyes narrowed, calculating, sensing the inevitable collision that would follow. Below, the streets remained frozen, citizens suspended between awe and terror, while the air hummed with the promise of an unprecedented confrontation. Metropolis had faced threats before, but none so singular, so purposeful as this arrival. The chessboard had been set, and the first move was already a challenge. The sky trembled with anticipation, as though the city itself understood the magnitude of the moment. And at the heart of it, a single thought echoed in Superman's mind. This was no ordinary battle. Superman descended, the wind parting around him with effortless grace, yet every instinct in his body screamed caution. He landed atop the shattered remnants of a plaza, the force of Vegeta's arrival having reduced statues and fountains to jagged ruins. The ground beneath his boots vibrated with the residual energy of the Saiyan's landing. Dust swirled, and the city seemed to lean in, as though it too were waiting to witness the first exchange between these two forces of nature. Vegeta's stance was unyielding, feet planted firmly on cracked concrete, fists clenched. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, followed Superman's every motion. There was no hesitation, no respect for local customs or etiquette, only the raw calculation of a warrior sizing up a worthy adversary. His aura flared subtly, not with theatricality, but with lethal precision, hinting at reserves of power that could, if unleashed, wipe entire city blocks from the map. Even standing still, he radiated challenge, a provocation carved into every line of muscle, every tilt of his head. Superman spoke again, measured and firm. "You don't have to do this. There's no reason to test me in the middle of a city." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they carried little weight. Vegeta's world did not operate on reason or negotiation. It revolved around strength, pride, and proving oneself in combat. The Saiyan's gaze shifted to the skyline, briefly assessing the vertical expanse of Metropolis as if calculating how much collateral damage he could endure while still maintaining honor in battle. Without warning, Vegeta's aura flared violently, and the air itself seemed to distort around him. The energy pushed outward in all directions, forcing pedestrians to stumble backward, duck, and cling to the nearest structures. Cars screeched as alarms blared, metal groaning under the invisible pressure. Superman felt the shift in the atmosphere immediately, recognizing the precise magnitude of the power he was facing. This was no mere intruder. This was a warrior whose every move could destabilize the balance of an entire city, and possibly more. Vegeta's voice cut through the chaos, low and commanding. "I did not come here to parley. I came to fight. I will know if you are worthy. If you resist, I will break you. And if you fall, I will continue until I am satisfied." Each word carried the weight of unshakable confidence, the aura of a prince who had faced countless foes and emerged victorious. Superman's eyes narrowed, a flicker of determination igniting within him. He had faced tyrants, gods, and beings who bent reality to their will. Yet even he felt the magnitude of the moment pressing down like an unseen hand, testing not only his strength but his judgment. Around them, the city held its breath. Street vendors froze mid-sail, children clutched their parents, and helicopters hovered at the perimeter, capturing what could be the first moments of a battle the world might never forget. The tension was not just physical, it was existential. Two worlds had collided in a single moment, and the scales of power were yet unmeasured. Superman instinctively gauged the potential outcomes, the destruction that would follow, and the moral calculus of engaging a being who operated on entirely alien terms. Vegeta took a single step forward, the air around him cracking faintly as if acknowledging the pressure of his presence. Superman felt the heat, the energy, and the inevitability. One clash, one misstep, could alter everything. Yet despite the looming threat, a part of him in instinct honed through decades of defending Earth, we recognized the clarity in Vegeta's purpose. This was not chaos, this was challenge. And in that recognition, in that acknowledgement of a warrior's code that transcended worlds, the city waited, trembling, for the moment the first blow would strike. The tension between them thickened, almost tangible, a living force that pressed down on the streets and skyscrapers alike. Superman stepped forward cautiously, boots leaving shallow impressions on the cracked concrete, his cape fluttering with the energy in the air. Every instinct screamed to prepare for impact, to brace for the surge of raw power that emanated from Vegeta like a storm ready to consume everything. The Saiyan Prince watched him with unblinking eyes, muscles coiled and ready, his aura a faint, shimmering distortion around him, as if the very molecules of the atmosphere recoiled in acknowledgement of his presence. Vegeta's voice cut the silence, sharp and resolute. I am not here to toy with your world, Kryptonian. I am here to measure strength, to test limits. Stand aside, or be crushed under the weight of what you cannot comprehend. The words carried no threat of diplomacy, only certainty, each syllable resonating with the unshakable pride of a warrior race that valued combat above all else. Superman, feeling the hum of energy against his skin, considered the magnitude of the arrival. He had faced enemies whose names shook galaxies, whose ambitions rivaled gods. Yet this presence was singular, perfect, contained, and terrifying focus of battle instinct. The city below began to react. Sirens wailed as traffic halted abruptly, the sound barely cutting through the low-frequency resonance of Vegeta's aura. People ducked into alleyways, glass shattered under the strain, and the wind carried a faint, metallic tang that made even Superman's stomach turn. Yet despite the chaos, there was a rhythm to it, almost ceremonial. Vegeta's stance, his measured gaze, and even the calculated sweep of his aura conveyed a singular message. This was a duel, not mindless destruction. It was a test of supremacy, and the city, whether it wanted to or not, had become the stage. Superman's jaw tightened. He had been the protector of Metropolis for years, the symbol of hope, the bulwark against every imaginable threat. But something about Vegeta unsettled him. There was no hesitation, no fear, no miscalculation, only pure, unadulterated confidence. An energy that dwarfed the threats he had faced before. And in that confidence lay the challenge. Could he match it, contain it, and still protect the innocents trapped beneath the looming storm? Vegeta shifted slightly, the slightest motion sending waves through the surrounding air. Superman's gaze followed, noting the subtle adjustments in posture, the way the prince's muscles tensed like coiled springs. He had fought beings who relied on brute force, on overwhelming power alone, but this was different. Vegeta combined technique, instinct, and an unshakable will in a way that made every movement potentially lethal. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a taut string vibrating between them. And yet there was an unspoken respect beneath the tension, a recognition that they were equals, at least in their awareness of the stakes. The first tremors of the confrontation rippled outward as Vegeta extended a single hand, testing the air with a pulse of energy that made streetlights flicker and windows shudder. Superman responded instinctively, channeling his own latent force, the invisible barrier of his strength spreading outward in preparation. Neither moved closer yet, but the world around them reacted as if the battle had already begun. Dust swirled in patterns dictated by unseen currents. Debris lifted and hovered in anticipation. And even the sky seemed to darken subtly, acknowledging the magnitude of what was about to unfold. In that suspended moment, Superman understood. This encounter was not a random collision of worlds. It was deliberate, precise, and irrevocable. The Saiyan Prince had arrived to challenge not only his strength, but his understanding of power itself. And as the first winds of their inevitable clash stirred through the streets, the city seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the impossible to descend fully into reality. The city had barely recovered from Vegeta's arrival when the first true clash erupted. Superman hovered above the plaza, fists clenched, eyes narrowed, muscles coiled beneath the strain of restraint. Below him, Vegeta's stance was unwavering, the faint shimmer of his aura intensifying as he measured his opponent. There was no hesitation, no inly, the weight of a challenge so immense that the air itself seemed to quiver with anticipation. The streets of Metropolis became an unintended arena. Civilians scattered to the periphery, cars abandoned mid-traffic, glass crunching underfoot like brittle crystal, yet no one could look away. Then Vegeta moved, a blur of bronze and energy. He propelled himself forward with a speed that defied the eye, striking the ground with the force of a missile that shattered concrete in its wake. Superman reacted instantly, intercepting the prince with a countering fist, the impact sending a shockwave through the plaza that bent steel and rattled foundations. The sound was deafening, a percussion of power and force that made the ground tremble as if the planet itself were responding. Each movement was a symphony of precision and strength, and every strike, block, and counterstrike painted the city in strokes of devastation and awe. Superman had faced enemies who wielded world-ending power, but Vegeta was different. There was no theatricality, no unnecessary flourish. Every motion, every strike, was honed for efficiency and impact. He tested, probed, and pressed, and Superman responded in kind, the rhythm of their confrontation creating an almost primal cadence in the streets below. Energy flares erupted like sudden suns, glass and metal vaporized in arcs of golden light. And yet, despite the destruction, there was a logic, a discipline, a silent narrative in the exchange. Vegeta's grin was sharp, predatory, fueled by the thrill of challenge. "Not bad," he hissed through clenched teeth as he landed another crushing blow, sending Superman skidding across a city block. "I expected more from your reputation, Kryptonian." Superman's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening as he rose, lifting debris as casually as one might lift a chair, using it as a barrier and then hurling it back with measured precision. The battle was not only physical, it was psychological, a war of wills just as much as strength. The citizens of Metropolis watched in stunned silence, some frozen in fear, others in awe, cameras capturing every second as the city became a stage for something far beyond comprehension. Every tremor, every flash of light, every gust of wind carried the message. Two beings of unimaginable power were testing each other, and the world around them was both witness and victim. Superman's heart weighed heavy not with fear, but with responsibility. Collateral damage was unavoidable, yet restraint was essential. Every block destroyed, every street cracked, was a testament to the stakes, to the fact that even the strongest heroes could be challenged in ways no one had foreseen. Vegeta's aura surged, spiking with unrestrained force, as though he were teasing the limits of the world itself. Superman felt the pressure against his chest, against his mind, against the very atmosphere around him. For a fleeting moment, the city seemed suspended, the clash frozen in time, and in that silence, a single truth became clear. This was not a battle that would be won by caution or diplomacy. It would be decided by raw power, instinct, and the unyielding will of two warriors who recognized no compromise. And then, with a roar that split the sky, Vegeta surged forward, energy blazing like a comet, and the real battle one that would leave scars across the city and in memory fully ignited. Asterisk. The first collision of fists sent a thunderous shockwave rippling through the streets, shattering glass and splintering steel alike. Each strike from Vegeta carried the weight of planets, each movement honed by years of battle across stars Superman could barely imagine. The Saiyan Prince moved with lethal elegance, a predator in perfect control of his body and energy, while Superman countered with precision, deflecting blows that would have flattened entire city blocks. The air between them shimmered with raw power, a visible distortion that made the ground tremble and the sky pulse with unnatural light. Vegeta's grin widened as he read Superman's counters, the battle feeding his pride and hunger for a challenge worthy of his name. "Not bad," he said, voice low but charged with energy. "You fight well, Kryptonian, but can you keep up?" And with that, he leaped, accelerating beyond the eye's perception, leaving behind only a blur of bronze and fiery aura. Superman followed instantly, the wind screaming past him, the city below reduced to streaks and shadows. They moved like storms, each strike a flash of inevitability, each block a testament to instinct and years of disciplined combat. Energy flares erupted with every contact. Heat scorched the concrete, sparks flew from metallic structures, and nearby, vehicles were thrown like toys by the pressure waves. Yet, amid the destruction, there was a rhythm, a terrifying choreography that only those who truly understood combat could perceive. Superman realized this was not mindless violence. Vegeta fought with intent, testing, gauging, and pushing to see the limits of his opponent. The Saiyan's eyes burned with an intensity that rivaled the sun itself, a mixture of pride, thrill, and relentless determination that marked him as both conqueror and judge. Superman's mind raced even as his body reacted. He felt the weight of responsibilities settle on him like gravity, a constant reminder that this duel was not only a measure of strength, but a test of restraint. Every punch he threw, every block he made, carried consequences beyond the immediate. A miscalculation, a mistimed strike, and the damage could escalate from citywide destruction to catastrophic collapse. Yet, for all the stakes, a part of him, an instinctive, primal understanding, recognized the value of this challenge. This was not an enemy merely to defeat. This was a warrior to be matched, a force of nature whose respect could only be earned. In combat, Vegeta's attacks grew sharper, faster, and more precise, each one carrying a weight of conviction that seemed to push against the very laws of the world. Superman felt the impact in his chest, his arms, even in the subtle pull of the air around him. His own strikes were measured, calculated, combining raw power with agility, exploiting every opening Vegeta allowed. But openings were rare, fleeting, and almost imperceptible. Each moment stretched into eternity as the two titans exchanged blows, their presence bending reality in a way that made the city feel simultaneously monumental and fragile. The people of Metropolis, from the rooftops and shattered streets, stared in awe and fear. Helicopters hovered, broadcasting live, capturing a spectacle that would be studied for generations. Every strike, every flash of energy, was not merely combated, was history in motion. Superman could sense the unspoken truth. This battle would define not just the limits of their power, but the perception of strength itself. A duel between legends where no one could afford weakness, hesitation, or doubt. And then Vegeta's eyes flickered with something sharper, something more dangerous. He drew back, energy coalescing into a sphere of molten brilliance above his palm. Superman's gaze hardened as he prepared, the air around him thickening with the promise of an unstoppable assault. The energy sphere crackled in Vegeta's palm like a miniature sun, radiating heat and light that warped the air around it. Sparks arced outward, sizzling against the jagged concrete and metal remnants of the plaza, while the distant sky seemed to darken beneath its brilliance. Superman's eyes narrowed, scanning every flicker of motion, every ripple in the air, calculating trajectories, anticipating force, and preparing a counter that could contain devastation without obliterating the city entirely. But even with all his experience, the sheer intensity of Vegeta's presence pressed against him like a living weight. Demanding respect, Vegeta's grin was sharp, predatory, and almost gleeful. "You've held your own, but let's see how you manage this." With a sudden, almost imperceptible motion, he launched the sphere at Superman, who reacted instinctively. The air tore around him as he accelerated, meeting the energy head-on, with a countering force that sent a blinding flash across the city. The impact rattled buildings for blocks, sending glass spraying like rain and shattering streets into jagged chaos. Pedestrians screamed in terror, and yet no one could look away. The spectacle was catastrophic but precise, an almost surgical display of apocalyptic beauty. Superman countered with his own heat vision, carving a path to redirect and disperse the molten energy. The two beams collided mid-air, creating an explosion of light and pressure that threw vehicles and debris in every direction. Yet neither faltered. Vegeta's eyes glinted with the satisfaction of a warrior finally met with a worthy test. Superman felt the pull of the immense power against his chest, muscles straining, willpower warring against instinct. Every second stretched longer, the city caught in a delicate suspension between destruction and survival. The Saiyan prince moved again, a blur, closing distance with breathtaking speed. Each strike, each kick, was calculated, designed not merely to damage but to probe, to understand the rhythm of his opponent. Superman countered, weaving through the attacks, landing precise blows in response, but he could feel the difference. In style, the innate battle instinct that Vegeta possessed. It was not just power, it was intuition, honed over lifetimes of combat across worlds. Superman had faced gods, but this was something different. Vegeta's laughter cut through the chaos, sharp and confident, carrying a thrill that bordered on reckless. Not bad, Kryptonian. I expected resistance, but you fight. Well. His grin widened as he surged upward, leaving streaks of bronze light that blurred the skyline. Superman followed, tension coiling in his chest, realizing that the duel had already escalated beyond physical confrontation. It was a clash of will, pride, and identity. Each fighter tested the other, and in doing so, tested the limits of the world itself. Below, the streets of Metropolis bore the scars of their battle. Fissures carved through asphalt, buildings groaned under invisible pressure, and every reflective surface mirrored the flashes of energy that tore across the sky. Yet, despite the devastation, the rhythm of the fight remained almost hypnotic, a deadly dance of speed, strength, and instinct. Superman, though exhausted, recognized the logic in Vegeta's onslaught. Each attack revealed intent, pride, and a desire not to dominate blindly, but to find the measure of his opponent. And then, with a sudden, almost imperceptible shift, Vegeta hovered briefly, aura flaring, eyes locking onto Superman with a promise unspoken but unmistakable. The true battle, the one that would define their confrontation, was only just beginning. The city, trembling, seemed to exhale as the Titans paused. An uneasy silence, bracing for the storm yet to come. The air was heavy with aftermath. The smell of scorched concrete and ozone clinging to every street and alley of Metropolis. Smoke curled from shattered buildings, drifting lazily into the sky, yet above the chaos. Superman and Vegeta hovered, separated only by a distance that belied the tension between them. The fight had subsided temporarily, not out of exhaustion, but because both warriors were taking measure of the other, recalibrating strategy and assessing limits in a moment of uneasy silence. The city seemed to exhale around them, aware that it had survived the first onslaught, but also painfully conscious that the storm was far from over. Vegeta's bronze hair glinted in the sunlight that pierced the smoke, his eyes sharp and analytical. He studied Superman with an intensity bordering on obsession, noting the subtle adjustments, the tiniest shifts in posture, and the way energy seemed to ripple differently around the Man of Steel. His aura, still a soft glow compared to its previous flare, betrayed the satisfaction of a challenge met with unexpected skill. "Interesting," he muttered, voice low and almost to himself. "You are stronger than I anticipated, but is it enough?" Superman's cape fluttered in the thin gusts sweeping between them, his gaze unwavering. Even in the quiet, he sensed the weight of Vegeta's pride, the unrelenting drive to test limits for the sake of proving worth. He felt the echoes of countless battles the Saiyan had fought, and recognized that the energy behind his attacks was not just raw power, but experience, instinct, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. And yet, In that same moment, Superman considered his own burden not just as a warrior, but as a protector. Every strike, every maneuver, carried consequences that extended far beyond the bounds of personal pride. Lives, city blocks, and the fragile balance of the world rested on choices made in microseconds. They circled each other cautiously now, like predators aware that the slightest misstep could mean defeat. Superman's mind analyzed, calculated, and anticipated. But there was also a rare, humanizing moment that reminded him he was more than a force of power. He considered the pride, the honor, and the history that Vegeta carried with him, and he recognized in that warrior a mirror of his own relentless drive to protect and endure. Both were bound by instincts and principles forged through hardship, yet tempered by entirely different worlds and codes. Below, the city murmured with the frightened awe of witnesses. Helicopters hovered, capturing the surreal tableau, while emergency crews cautiously approached, weaving around pockets of debris and still hot fragments of energy. The people did not fully comprehend what they had witnessed, but there was a shared recognition that something extraordinary had passed through their streets. A glimpse of raw, unrestrained, tempered by discipline, Vegeta's aura pulsed faintly, and a small, almost imperceptible smirk curved his lips. "Your restraint is unusual," he said, voice cutting through the haze. "Most I've faced would have already destroyed everything around them to win. You are not like them. That is interesting." Superman, sensing the acknowledgement, responded with a calm tone, even as tension remained taut between them. "Strength without control is meaningless. You may have power, Vegeta, but what you do with it defines who you truly are." The words hung between them like a tangible bridge, a philosophical echo that contrasted the physical destruction strewn across Metropolis. Both warriors were caught between instinct and reflection, pride and responsibility. And in that suspended moment, the city held its breath once more, witnessing a battle not just of fists and energy, but of understanding, principle, and the quiet reckoning of what it meant to wield power without losing one's humanity or, in Vegeta's case, one's honor